Welcome to the Art Coaching Club podcast. I'm your host, Hayley Price, artist, owner of the online art gallery, The Scouted Studio, and business coach for artists. With experience starting and running my own art business, growing an online art gallery, and coaching artists internationally on how to grow their careers, I've learned the art world inside and out. I've made all of the mistakes so you don't have to. Every episode will be a little bit different, but I promise that each week I will show you how to tackle your biggest business challenges so you can get back in the studio doing what you love. Now let's get into it. Well, welcome to the podcast. Can you start off by just introducing yourself to the audience and telling them a little bit about how you became an artist in the first place?
Yes. Okay, my name's Kim Hassold. I'm in Greenville, South Carolina, and it is beautiful here. If you haven't been, it's especially pretty today, but I actually love the idea of communication. And I spent years as a writer. I was editor of our city magazine and also building my art career at the same time. So I love anything creative and finding a way to connect with people, whether it's writing or painting or whatever it is. About 3 years ago, I had been editor for 18 years. I left and took the big leap and went to art full time. So that's where I am now.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Well, can you tell us a little bit about your work, your style, the different, just kind of in your own words, the type of work you're doing?
Okay. I do mostly mixed media. I started out in oils. Honestly, I'm just too messy and too impatient. Although I do love the way they smell. I will say I enjoy being around other people painting, but I kind of transitioned into acrylics and trying to figure out a way to get the texture that I wanted. I started painting the papers into my own palette. So, just different designs and things. And so I keep bags of papers that are yellow, red, whatever, with patterns and in those things. So as I'm painting, I pull those out and add them using just like a gel medium.
Yeah.
So most of my paintings are mixed media now, but I do some just straight acrylic as well.
How did you come to find your style in the first place? How did it kind of all come to be?
I'm a very loose painter. And I always tell people, if you want to loosen up, use a big brush. And like I said, I'm not somebody who really has to think things. I'm more of a jump in and just slap it on there and see what happens. And so I feel like over time, I've just really learned to, like I said, I feel like the big challenge for anybody who's writing or painting or whatever is to get on the page or the canvas what's in your head. And that just takes time, because I would paint things and think that's not what I meant at all. I don't know how that got so dark or how it got so heavy. And,
Right.
We can all overpaint if we stay on something too long. So I think it was just over time, I've definitely developed a style that I think is recognizable.
It definitely is. And I think what you've done so well is your style is recognizable subject matter to subject matter. Like you can paint
Right.
a lot of different things, and that's hard to accomplish.
Well, thank you. I think it is. That's what you want. You want people to say, I know that's Kim Hassold before I even see the name. I know that's what it is. And I really have worked on that. But I think, like you said, transferring from subject to subject is still like my color palette. And it's still, I use a lot of shapes. I like an outline. So, those things are going to transfer no matter what, and I feel like as an artist, you enjoy doing different things. Like my signature thing, I would say are probably florals. And I do a lot of them, but sometimes I just want to do a bird.
Yeah. Like I'm bored. I want to do something
I
else.
just want to do something else.
Yeah. Well, I think you definitely have a technique down almost. Like I feel like that's almost a better word than style because it's like the way you paint, the colors you're drawn to, the big brush strokes. It's bold, it's vibrant, and it seems like it's you. It seems like you kind of exude that personality too.
Well, thank you. I do. I love my home is sort of the same. I love big, bold things. And like I said, I'm just kind of for lack of a better term, I'm kind of a loose person. Like, I'm kind of good. I'm just really there to have a good time. And, I love people. I love to try different things. And so it does kind of suit my personality. Honestly, one time, this has been years ago, because I do love to a couple times a year take an art workshop. I love to learn from other people. And so I was taking one and I was just happily painting away. And the instructor, I could feel her kind of standing behind me. And I was like, what do you want? But anyway, I was kind of standing there and she said, is that what a flower looks like? And I thought, well, That's what it looks like to me. So I think it's just a matter of, it makes me so tense to think about having to be very detailed and small. And I can appreciate that in other people's work, but it's not for me.
Yeah, it's like your work is so true to you. And I
Mhm.
think that's where a lot of your success, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but from an
Right,
outside perspective, your success seems to come from that just like authenticity. And it just feels
right.
like you come through in your work in so many ways.
Well, thank you. And I do love, that's one thing we can talk about. I'm always real interested in talking to other artists and kind of hearing what they're doing. And I always tell people, I can tell you a lot of things that also that did not work that I'm happy to share, because it's kind of that, you try a lot of things that don't work. So you try something else. But particularly on Instagram, it's just such a huge platform for me because I'm able to really incorporate a lot of the things I love. Like I said, I love to write, and so I make up all these, signs or things I'm going to do or reels or whatever. And I just think I'm just really being hilarious to myself. I'm thinking I'm really being hilarious doing all this stuff, but it's fun to invite other people into that, and then they feel like they know me a little bit. They see my art. They don't want to see something that's completely different from what I have presented, and I just think that is where a lot of us can get hung up, is feeling like we should paint a certain way or do a certain thing to have it be real or authentic or whatever.
And I think, a little behind the scenes, a lot of people requested you to come on this podcast. And I think it's because you resonate with so many people, not because you are just like them, but because you are so yourself that people are like,
Right.
oh, I want to be able to show up in that way and have my art be represented in that way. And let's get into it. I mean, I'd love to start first with maybe let's talk marketing and Instagram and all the things that
Okay.
have worked. And then we definitely can get into what hasn't
Once
too.
it didn't work, yeah. Well, for me, really, Instagram, I started off, well, I kind of started with like a lot of other people, like, I think people who want to be a full-time artist, everybody just can't do that. I mean, you can't make enough money to do it. It takes time. So I was working two jobs, I had a full-time job, and then I would come over here or to my other studio then at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon and paint till like
Yeah.
8 o'clock or whatever. And my kids are grown, so everybody can't do that. But you have to figure out a way, to kind of build. So I started just really posting things and doing shows locally and kind of calling people I knew, like in Charlotte or in Atlanta, places I knew I could easily drive and take all my
Right.
stuff, and just kind of networking on how can I get my name there. And once I would go someplace and kind of get my name there, then I would follow up with that on Instagram, try to just keep people interested. And would, like a lot of people do, record myself painting, kind of show what it was look like. And then when I left the magazine, I was, like I said, when I was working at the magazine, I had an opportunity to do a lot of writing and photographs. I had photographers at my disposal, etc. And I kind of missed that when I left. So I thought, okay, how can I
Yeah.
carry that on? I have an assistant who works for me, and she does all my photography. And it's so funny because she will be doing a reel, and the whole time she'll be going, "You are really making such a fool of yourself." And I'm like, I know, I know, I don't care. But it's just inviting people into what you're doing. So that just kind of kept building and building for me. And then I would, I think it's really important to connect with other people who are in, like, in any bit, because it is a business. You have to
Right.
look at it as a business. And of course, the idea of painting all day is appealing. And I love being able to have the freedom to do that. But I also have to figure out, okay, how am I going to pay the rent for this? How am I going to pay my assistant? How am I going to buy all these millions of supplies that I feel like I need? So you've got to consistently, I think, who am I trying to reach?
Yeah.
Like, you're not trying to reach everybody in the world. You need to figure out who, just like in any business, what am I going to provide to these people and who are these people? And it's kind of easy for me because I feel like my collectors are like me. We're very
Right.
similar in what we like. And I tend to appeal mainly to women. I do have a lot of men followers, and I get a lot of interest from men around Mother's Day and Christmas because
Uh-huh.
their wives are telling them that's what they want. But mainly, I'm trying to appeal to somebody who wants something in their home that's going to be original and fun, and they're going to be happy when they look at it, and it's going to be a statement thing. And I'm looking for that person. And I know a lot of those people in Greenville, but those people are everywhere. I just don't know them. So I'm always trying to tag other artists, or like I have artist friends who'll say, I'm having this release, will you please post it on your stories, or so that we can all share each other's people.
Yeah.
And for people who are listening to this who may not follow me on Instagram, I started doing these. Well, I tell you what happened was I got real irritated because when I left my other job, people kept referring to me as being retired because I was painting. Oh my gosh, that really set me off because I worked hard to build an art business. So the first sign I did was in regard to the fact that I was not retired.
Yeah.
And so I got such a response from that. And it's so funny. I do them once a week, and I just kind of put different things up. And I've had a couple of them go viral. And it's so funny to me, the ones that do, because they're not necessarily the ones I think would.
Oh, right.
But I also use it, like I'll hold up a sign that says, tell your rich friends about my art release, or whatever, and then put the date up there. So there's a method to the madness. You're
Absolutely
thinking, how can I reach these people?
Yeah, and I think it's really smart. You definitely have such a great idea about reaching like who you're trying to reach and who your customer is, because I feel like those videos you put up, they hit that like, oh, that's funny, or like, oh, I relate to that, or oh, I was thinking that. Like I didn't say it out loud, but I was thinking it.
That's what most people say. You always say what we're thinking. I'm like, well, somebody's got to say it.
Exactly. And I think that's kind of part of your charm and why people really love to hear from you. But I think a lot of artists kind of miss that. I think something you've done really well is you really understand who you're speaking to, and it aligns with you, which is great.
And that I feel like is one of the first steps, because everybody's doesn't have the personality of wanting to be in front of the camera all the time or whatever.
Right.
That's okay. But you have to figure out, okay, how am I going to get my work in front of the people who are going to buy it? Because like for me, I've got a bunch of followers, and I mean, they aren't all going to buy art. I don't even know who they are. Like, I mean, they're from all over the place, but if I'm going to post 20 paintings, I only need 20 buyers.
Exactly.
So if I have 15,000 followers, I don't even have 15,000 paintings if they all wanted one, but the chances of me selling 20 paintings, a month in a release, or every other month, or whatever it is, are pretty good.
Right. And I think especially when you really understand who you're speaking to, and I think people are so scared to niche down because they're like, oh, if I get too small, I'm going to alienate people. But you're exactly right. You can have 15,000 followers, but you only need 20. Like you only need to speak clearly to 20 of them.
If you try to, tone down what you have to say so that it suits everybody, then it's not appealing to anybody.
Exactly.
And I don't hardly ever get negative comments, but one time somebody wrote and said, everyone can't live with all that color. And I was like, well, why are you on this?
Okay, like don't follow me then.
Bye-bye. And and I will occasionally, rarely, because I mean, I feel like people kind of know my style, so they don't come to me for commission unless they want color.
Right.
But I occasionally will have someone say, we really want some of your art. I don't like orange. I don't like pink. I don't like this. And I will say, I don't think I'm the artist for you.
And I think that's huge.
You're not going to like it, and I'm not going to enjoy doing it. So, here's some other local people I think you'd love, but I don't feel like I'm the artist for you. And that's, I mean, that takes time to build up to the point where you can afford to say that. But I think that's a valuable thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I think it allows you to keep your brand intact too, because you're not saying yes to, black and white paintings that are totally off base. It sounds like something that's been really big for you is having a community of artists. Have you always surrounded yourself with other artists? Did you seek them out? Did they find you?
I really have. And in fact, like I said, I enjoy I paint by myself all the time because I'm in a studio by myself. So I enjoy, and I love people, and I love to talk about art and see how people are doing things. So I take a workshop. I take a couple of workshops a year. And like right now, we have a great art center here. And yesterday I started a 5-week course on Matisse. and just painting with his style and his colors. And I don't know anybody else in it. I just decided to sign up for it. And it's so great because it's making me think in different ways. And it's kind of like, I think of it like when you get your makeup done, you never like all of it. Like you're sitting there thinking, as soon as I get home, I'm taking this off. This looks terrible. But you might find a lipstick you like, or you might find an eyeshadow you love, and you're going to incorporate those things into what you do. And it's the same thing to me with learning from other people. I'm not looking to copy them or do things exactly or steal anything, but I am interested in, I think, oh, that's a good idea. I haven't ever thought about presenting it in that way. Looking, and like even in this class I'm taking, like I'll meet some other artists locally who I didn't know before. And there'll be a time where I'll call them and say, hey, do you know where I can get so and so or whatever. So I think, and I don't know if you know Maria Driscoll, but she's an artist out of Roanoke, and she and I met at a show in Charlotte a few years back. And we've been it's been great for us to call each other because we don't live in the same place and we're not trying to outdo each other or whatever, but she's great to run things by or, whatever. So, I feel like it is important to seek out other people.
Well, definitely, especially when we're alone majority of the time in our own heads, it's nice to have a second opinion.
You're like, is this terrible or really good? I don't know.
Exactly. Literally me all day.
Yes. And you know what I do? This is another little trick somebody told me a long time ago, because I think all of us can overpaint if we just keep on and, trying to add this or fix this or whatever. This artist told me that if she always keeps 5 paintings going, and when she comes in the morning, she makes the worst one the best.
Oh, I love that.
So that has really helped me with not overpainting. If I feel like I'm about to, I'll work on something else for a while. Yeah. And also paint in acrylics if I have them all up there, because I tend to draw and then paint. If I mix a color I really like, because it's going to dry up, because it's acrylic, I'll slap it on a couple of the others, So anyway, that's just fun of a little exercise to try.
Yeah, no, I really love that because I definitely feel like I'm the type person where I'll create one piece and I'll really love it, and then I try to replicate it and the rest aren't good.
Yes.
And so working on 5 at once and kind of having that like make the worst one the best mentality is so smart.
I think that's kind of a good idea.
Yeah. Well, can you take us through like a day in the life or a week in the life? Like, what is it like when you walk in the studio? How do you approach your organization, your day, getting things done? What does that look like?
Well, I have, I told you that I have an assistant and she is very organized. She doesn't just sit here and work all day. She is here to do photography, but I think it's really important, if you can get any help, to get somebody in any business who is really good at what you're not good at. I'm a very, like most artists, I'm very emotional, mood-driven painter. Like I sometimes like, oh, I know what I'm going to paint today. But she sends me a list of what I'm supposed to accomplish in the week, because I always have people waiting on commissions. Right. And I love doing them, but sometimes I'm in the mood to do something else. And she'll call me. This is kind of a running joke, but she'll call me and say, how's it going on that commission for so-and-so? And I'll be like, oh, it's going great. It's going great. She'll go, send me a picture. She
like,
knows I'm not sure. I haven't bought the canvas. I don't even know what it is. But I think that normally what I do, this is my normal routine. I love to go to, are you familiar with Orange Theory?
Yes.
It's a workout. Okay. Well, I love that. And there's one that's about 2. I wish I could flip my camera and show you, because I'm downtown Green. My studio's on the river. And there is one that's a block over. So I go there at 7:30. Then I come to the studio and paint. I kind of look at, like I always have some things in progress, and I try to look at where I was. And working with paper is really messy. I mean, the paper's all over the place. So if I'm working on, say, a lot of mixed media stuff, I'll tend to try to stick with those, because I don't want to clean up the paper until I'm finished. And then So I'm a big fan of Audible. So I'm always listening to a book while I'm painting. And it's so funny, because talking about my paintings, my favorite thing to listen to are thrillers. So like people are getting killed all around me, and I'm like, oh, this is so pretty. Look at these pink flowers. This is great. So I'm always listening to something. I'm in a studio by myself, but next door to me is a studio with 8 artists. So I usually call one of them and say, are y'all going to eat lunch? Is anybody ready to eat lunch or whatever? Sometimes we sit outside and, that sort of thing. So I pretty much paint all day if I'm going to paint. And on the days I'm not going to paint are the days I get dressed. And then I do everything. Otherwise, I just stay in my exercise clothes all the time with a smock on top. It really just depends on, what I'm preparing for. Like right now, I'm doing a Birds and Bees release for Valentine's. And now I'm doing a floral release, sort of just for spring and daylight savings. So I kind of have a schedule of what I'm working on. It just depends on, where I am with that. And then I have commissions that are due on the schedule. So that's kind of how I do it.
How much time are you devoting to like actual art versus the business side of things?
I try to sit down at the beginning of the year and kind of figure out, okay, I'm going to do these releases and I'm going to release them approximately on this time frame. So I guess we would consider this part of it, but that involves a lot of promotional photos, work in progress, just kind of get people excited. Oh, and you know what that reminds me? That I want us to talk about is a newsletter.
Yes.
So I don't know if y'all have already talked about this to death.
No, let's dive into it.
But this is a great thing because these are the people who are really interested in buying your work. So I do a newsletter once a month, and it's not so much about getting the newsletter as it is the fact that they get early access to all of the releases that I do. So generally speaking, I do a release at 10 o'clock in the morning. So these people will receive a password to get in at 9 o'clock. And honestly, I'm selling the majority of my work between 9 and 10.
Amazing.
But when I do a release, because I feel like it's kind of a special thing for them to go, look, first, this also gives that sense of urgency. Like if I don't get it right now, it's going to be gone. And these are people who have signed up because they want to see my work. So of the 1,500, as opposed to 15,000. So those people are going to get a preview. They're going to get to buy theirs early, and they're not going to get in a scramble of people later. So I feel like that's a really important thing for people. And also, I'm right at the head of this, depending on Instagram, but we really have no control. I mean, I do not own Instagram. They can leave with all my people and there's nothing I can do, but these people are email. I have their emails and I'm sending them this stuff, and I don't send them stuff all the time, and they don't want to, I'm on Instagram if they want to see it, but once a month I send out something, and then it just gives them that early access. So I think that's a great thing for people who are trying to build a business.
Yeah, I completely agree. Can you kind of walk us through when you do a collection launch, like what does that process look like from you, from like even when you're just starting to talk about to you're sending the preview email to it's going out? Like what are all the steps for somebody who hasn't done this before?
Okay, normally what I do is, like I said, I'll pick a subject matter, and I feel like it's really important to me. I feel like I need at least 12 to 15 paintings of different sizes. I do a lot of squares for some reason, like 20 by 20, 24 by 24, 36 by 36 is a very popular size for me. So I'll do a mix of those, and I kind of just decide, okay, I'm going to do maybe 20 to 25 paintings. And some of them are going to be 9 by 12 because everybody can afford a big painting. I get that. So I try to do an assortment of things, and I will, as I'm working on them throughout the time, building that collection, I will constantly be doing work in progress reels, showing what I'm doing. Maybe I'll show myself painting paper one day, and then as I complete them, I'll do one, and I'll start it's about a month out. And I think we just announced yesterday. And I always like to put one of those little time things. What do you call them that counts down?
The countdown timer thing.
And it's like a month, and then it'll just start counting down. And it's real exciting because you'll see people set on their Instagram, that they want to know when that is. They want to be reminded when that is. So I try to make sure that it's real easy for them to remember by continuing to do prompts throughout that time. Not every day. Like I have heard some coaches, I guess, art people say, you have to do it every day for 6 weeks. And I'm like, I personally don't want to hear about it for 6 weeks. I mean, I'm going to mix some other things in there. Like today, I think I'm going to post something about, like I said, the Matisse class I'm taking. Like, what else is going on? But I'm going to continue to remind people that I'm doing that. And as I finish them, I'm going to do that, somewhere else so people can get a feel for what it's going to look like hanging. here's a 36 by 36 that I'm going to put in the collection. And if they, during the course of that month, say, oh, I really want that, then I will go ahead and sell that to them. But it's like customer service. It's kind of how I look at it.
Truly.
If you own a clothing boutique and you have certain customers that are going to love something, then it's not very smart of you not to meet that need if you have what they want. So I try to keep a little list of those and kind of send things out along the way. So that's pretty much what I do. And then right at the end, I will really start showing like I'll probably do a photo shoot where it'll be me with all the things. I think this is probably true of all artists, I would think, is the ones that get the most traffic are the ones that I'm in. Because I think people kind of want to see it. Even if you don't want to stand around and talk, you can still get some nice photo, even if it's your husband taking them with your phone, get some nice photos of yourself with the paintings and put them out there for people to see.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you are kind of a part of your brand, especially someone like you who's similar to your customer base. And I think that's true for a lot of people. It really makes such a difference.
Well, I think it catches people's attention, and they're like, oh, what's this? I do think to work around a way to get that out there is good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, kind of circling back to the launch and the email list, how do you get people on your email list?
I try to really promote, if I ever do a show or anything, then I always get the emails. The emails are the thing. And everybody loves text. I mean, I text. That's my major form of communication because I don't really love to talk on the phone. So I either want to be with you or I just want you to text me yes or no. So, but emails in this case are really important because they're going to get that. So I just started gathering them up and then I started promoting the fact that they could get this early access. That's really the key. And that's really a golden spot for us. And if you're selling anything or that list of people who have shown an interest in what you're selling. And because they are sincerely interested in your product. And I'll occasionally I don't really love to paint small, but I try to accommodate. Everybody can't afford a big painting. And so I'll do sometimes 6 by 6. I only paint on gallery wrap, which, as you know, is the thicker canvas because I don't frame anything. I just finish the sides in wire so they're ready to go. They can be framed. But what I found was that people were changing the frames to match what they are home or whatever. And that's just me. A lot of artists do frame, but since I don't, I'll do those. And I mean, those always sell out, before 10 o'clock. And people would, irately write to me and say, how can these be sold out? Just I'm like, you have to sign up for the newsletter. And I will do a graphic that shows how to go to my website and how to go down to the bottom where it says join our newsletter. And like I said, I'm certainly not using it any other time. Yeah, I'm only using it to send the newsletter.
And I love that you said you even just make a graphic and it's like,
here's how you do it. Yeah. You go to this, scroll down and it's right here. Just hit that and give your email and you'll get it.
Okay. I love this. Such good advice. Let's dive a little bit deeper into Instagram because you're doing a ton. You're doing well. You do have 15,000 something followers.
Yes.
I didn't check today.
Yeah.
Can you dive into, how, and you talked about what you do leading up to a launch, but how do you think about Instagram day to day, week to week? Do you have kind of a process?
I kind of do. I always post the sign on Sunday, because I know I'm going to be dressed that day. So I take the sign, make my husband take the sign, take a picture of me holding the sign. And really, that's just been kind of a fluky thing. That's one of those things where you just try things and see if it connects with your audience. And again, for me, when I'm writing those things, I'm like, hey, Hayley, listen to this. Don't you think so? And you're like, yes, a sick man is the worst thing in the world or whatever, whatever it is. Like, it's just a way, again, I'm always looking for that connection. Mm-hmm. No matter who you are, you know what it feels like, say, to be cold, or you know what peanut butter tastes like, or you know what red is. So if I can get both of us on that spot, it does not matter where we're from or who we have connected and we've communicated.
Exactly.
So I think for Instagram, I do that on Sundays, and then I try to post 3 other times during the week. And that might be work in progress. Like I might just turn it on, while I'm here working. Like I said, I'm doing that class, so I'll post something about that. I think yesterday or day before, I painted one of the floral paintings that I finished, just announcing that those will be coming up. So I'm just trying to think in terms of keeping me top of mind for people
Right.
without just making up stuff, because I think it needs to be worthwhile content, because there's so many things. And I'm the first to say, I'll just scroll past it. If it doesn't catch my eye immediately, I'm not going to stop and look at it. So I think for Instagram, just start off and just try to, like I said, connect with other artists who are doing what you want to do. Try to get them to help share your stuff. Just figure out how to get your name out there. I did read something one time that said, be careful that you don't have a whole following of just other artists, because they aren't necessarily going to be the ones buying your work.
How much weight do you put on like follows, likes? Like when posting on Instagram, do you kind of just like post and then you're like, all right, on my way? Or do you really look at the analytics?
So I don't look at it as oh my gosh, this is going to determine whether or not I'm going to have a good day. But I am
Right.
interested in what people respond to. So I am looking at likes and I am looking at comments to
Right.
see if people are engaging. Because if I'm posting something and there's just no response, then I'm like, well, that didn't work. Yeah, I don't want to do that again. So I
Yeah.
do think it's important from just a marketing standpoint to kind of see, what is kind of like advertisers. Like, if you're putting out a product and nobody wants to advertise in it, then you're like, okay, well, this isn't either I'm sending it to the wrong people or this is not a viable product. So I think it's a good way to see, how people are responding to what you're doing.
Definitely. Well, it sounds like you've had a lot of success in a lot of things, but can we kind of touch on maybe what hasn't worked, different challenges, things that have been not so easy when being an
Yes,
artist?
yes. Well, I'll tell you one in particular that always, I think you have to be careful. Again, it just really so much of it goes back to knowing who your audience is and where they are, and you be in those places. But I remember one time, gosh, this has been 2 or 3 years ago, I got kind of talked into doing this show, and I kind of had a bad feeling about it, but I was like, well, I'll go see. And, the other artists who were there work was so much less expensive than mine, like ridiculously less expensive than mine. But I didn't sell one thing. I had to drive to another place, take all my stuff there, put it there. And it wasn't that I was just in the wrong place. I
Mhm.
can't sell one of my paintings if somebody next to me is selling theirs for $25. That was just a big fail for me. I took all this work and did it. The good news was that I had the work to sell later, but I think it's really important. Again, I would say the number one tip that I would give to artists once two things. One, I would say develop a style before you start trying to sell your work,
Mhm.
because I think that there can be a whole sea of things that look exactly the same. And you're like, who did that? These all look just like, and we all have to learn. I would just try to kind of sell a few things to friends, or people are coming in your house and saying, oh my gosh, I love that. Who did it? And you're saying, well, it was me, because I can't afford to buy anything else. And, or whatever it is, then, you start thinking, oh, well, people are responding. Maybe I'll try to be in this show and I want to see who else is in it. And see, like for me, even now, I'm trying to be in shows with people who are better than me, who I consider, you know, farther along than me for whatever reason, whether their things are more expensive or they're more well known or whatever it is. Those are the people I want to be with,
Right.
because I want to be elevated to that level as well. So I think that, yeah, I think probably the mistakes for me the biggest mistakes I've made are when I have either not done it, asked enough questions about what I was getting into, or I have gone places where my people were not.
And then it's just a waste of time.
Right. And I think another thing is too, a lot of people do group shows, and I don't tend to do them very much anymore. I did a lot of them, I feel like, earlier, and I would like to do it, but I just haven't, I don't know, like I said, I'm trying to just be real focused on what
Right.
I'm trying to do. But I think that, again, you can be at a show where somebody's just selling out and you're just kind of standing over there with all your stuff, but you don't know who's going to see your work that day. One thing I would not recommend people do is do work to get exposure. People say, well, you do all this for me just to get exposure. You're like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
But I will, go, it's a business. I'm trying to make some money. So I'll come and sell some things, but I won't give you 100 things free, just to
Right.
sell or whatever. So I just think you have to be careful. You have to look at it as a business and how am I going to market my business? So, like I said,
Definitely.
I would say those are the biggest mistakes. The biggest mistakes for me were those. And I think a big mistake people can make is trying to support themselves on their art too early. Most people have to work two jobs until they can get their work or either have another source of income somehow.
Yeah, and I think that's not talked about enough because a lot of
Mhm.
artists feel like they're not a real artist until they're
Right,
full time. Ironically, I tell so many people once you put all of the pressure on your artwork, if you're not prepared to pay all your bills with it,
right,
it's really hard to develop a style and
right.
stay consistent and trust your gut and all the things you're doing if you also have to pay the rent at the end of the day. And
Yeah,
so
and
it's
yeah, and it makes it not even enjoyable.
right.
It's this pressure, and I think that's really important to, if people can. I always recommend that they try to set up an area in their house or anywhere where they can leave their stuff set up. And that's hard if you have little children, I know, but because sometimes you just have an hour or you just have 2 hours and you think, well, by the time I get all this stuff out, I'm not even going to have time. So if you
Right.
can set it up for you to be as successful as you can be by just getting your stuff out there and producing the work, getting your style more defined, and then figuring out who your audience is and put your work where they are.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And something that
Mhm.
kind of builds on that is pricing. How did
Right,
you think about pricing and not undersell yourself and
right.
understand what your client wanted to pay? How do you think about pricing now? And how did you think about it when you first started out?
Well, I started out by, of course, a lot less expensive than I do now, but I started out by looking at people who, like I said, who were better or who were where I wanted to be, and people I felt like were at my level, or just people, that's why I think it's so important to know what other artists are doing. Is I just try to figure out, okay, what are they charging for their sizes? Like I literally would spend time going on other artists' websites and looking at their pricing. Like how much is this person's 24 by 24? How much is this person's 36 by 36? And I would, price accordingly, a little bit less, a little bit more. And also, this is something that I learned early on that I did not know. And I'd see if you agree with this. I stick with this, but see if you agree with this. I don't sell through any galleries. I haven't really pursued that because I haven't
Mhm.
really needed to.
Yeah.
But I feel like I came along right on the cusp of, with my career, right on the cusp of Instagram being a really viable way for artists to sell their work.
Hmm.
And so I'm not giving 40 to 50% of what I make. So that also affects my pricing,
Right.
because I think if you are, but what I was going to say, see if you agree with this, is that, you need to keep your pricing consistent across the board because galleries do not want you to sell your painting for $1,000 and then they have to sell it for 2,000 because then when people do find out your name, they're going to want to come get it from you because it's $1,000 less. So I think you
Exactly.
have to figure out a pricing range that works for you, and what you're going to really end up with. And I have a ton of artist friends who only sell through galleries and they just like the convenience of just getting a check, giving it to
Yeah.
the other people and getting a check. So I think it's just a personal decision. There are a lot of great galleries. I do work with a lot of different interior designers. If you can connect with those people, because they're always looking for stuff to put in their clients' homes and they like to have a relationship, and maybe you can give them a small percentage of it and it's worth it for you because they're going to take your stuff and try it. It just depends on how you want to go. All of it's marketing. So it depends on
Truly.
how you want to go about it. And for me, I've been able to build a brand that I'm really painting as much as I can. I really can't produce a lot of other work more than I'm doing.
Right.
So I'm not looking into that at this time, but I did do some emerging artist shows. That's another good thing for people to look at. Like I know, for instance, Anne Irwin in Atlanta has
Yeah.
an emerging artist show, and I did do that one year, and I was thrilled to pieces to get in it. So I think there are a lot of ways to go just to get your name out there.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing too, is figuring out one, personality types. When you touched on galleries and designers, it's like some people like the gallery route. Some people want, I
Right,
mean, you're doing a ton of marketing yourself, and like some
right,
people love that, some people hate that. You can always do a mix, but same with like shows. Those are a great way to get exposure, but also get a taste of like what working with a gallery
right,
is like. Because there really is, there's so many ways you can go to sell your artwork. But I think at the
right.
end of the day, I 100% agree. You have to be consistent. And so if you are going to work with people that are going to take a percentage, you need to
Mhm.
make sure your pricing allows you to, still make
Right.
good money.
Yes, exactly. So you're not thinking, oh gosh, I broke even. And,
Right.
I think there are now that, so it seems so crazy that it was 5 years ago with the pandemic, but I think that really changed the dynamic for everybody. And I think
Yeah.
people did start buying art online more because they were home and they couldn't go anywhere. So that was a viable place to get it. But like I said, I mean, I personally, when I'm out of town, I love to go into galleries. And really, a very good friend of mine has a great gallery here. So I think it just depends. Like you said, there are all kinds of options. You just have to kind of decide what works for you.
Definitely. And I think that's kind of one of those trial and error things, but you
Right.
figure it out and then go from
Mhm.
there.
Oh, here's another thing we can tell people about online galleries.
Yeah.
Like I did Well and Wonder for a long time and I loved it. I loved it. And for people who may not, they're an online gallery that represents women artists in the Southeast. And they have a great reputation. Molly Creason is the person who started that, and she is awesome. And
Yeah.
I loved doing it. I did that for God, 4 or 5 years, and then I just kind of I decided to do my own thing. But I think that's great. And there's an online gallery here, and they just do, for instance, they only do paper work. I bought a painting from an artist, Megan Warner is her name, and she
Hmm.
does beautiful things. And I bought a painting for this is what I love about it. I bought a painting from her through Well and Wonder. She had a release through Well and Wonder, and I bought a painting from her. And she sent me a DM and she said, "Oh my gosh," she said, "I'm dying that you bought one of my paintings. You're my mother in law's favorite person."
I
I
love
thought,
that.
that's just so fun. So we've kind of built up a good little relationship. And, like I saw she was doing a show and I said, "How was it?" And she said, "Oh, I should have brought smaller things, blah, blah, blah." So it's just a good networking thing.
It really is. Something like an online gallery or in-person
Yes.
gallery or just some kind of even working in a studio, like all of those things can kind of start to give you that network.
And like something like Well and Wonder, they're selling to people all over the United States. So,
Right.
that your name, people who follow them are gonna see your name and your work who would never see
Exactly.
it. And that's really what you're paying them for. So there is
Right.
that side of it because now it's so crazy. I do releases now and I mail things to Idaho. And who's even thought about Idaho and since elementary school? I was like, I
Yeah.
forgot about Idaho. Or, I send a lot of things to Texas or whatever. And it's just a matter of somebody from there bought one of my paintings. And then her friends came and saw that and wanted to follow or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely the power of social media. And then I think it's also
Yes.
the power of like, if you're going to give someone a commission, make sure they're holding up their end of the deal and
Right.
doing that marketing for you, which,
Yes. Yes.
most galleries do. But
Yes.
yeah, I think that's great. Well, can you talk about what you see next for your business? I mean, we've covered a lot of ground today.
I am really, like I said, my goal for this year is to do consistent releases because I feel like that, I do have some people who are waiting for me to release something new work so they can get it. And for me, it's work. I enjoy doing a collection of things instead of doing one and trying to sell that one and doing another and trying to sell that one. So that's been a really good thing for me. I enjoy the newsletter that I do. Like I said, that just kind of incorporates a lot of my skills because I can do the writing in there. And I usually do like a book of the month. This is what I'm listening to while I'm painting, all of that. And I get a lot of
Right.
good response to that. And I really enjoy that. So I'm trying to figure out ways that I can expand that and how I can maybe tie some financial gain from that. So I'm kind of trying to look at ways. Oh, and I started doing prints last year
Great.
because, again, everybody can't buy a big painting, but you can buy a beautiful big print. And so I have started doing that. So I'm kind of trying to look at ways that I can expand my brand without adding 40 hours a week to my work
Right.
to my work schedule. So I'm trying to really work smart and still reserve the time for me to do the creative work I want to do. So I think there's so many opportunities where you can get your followers involved in what you're doing. I'm a big earring girl. I love a big earring and I love an unusual earring. And I have so many people write and say, where did you get those earrings? How can I tag that in to the people who make these? Like I wear a lot of Farm Rio dresses. And so I'm always tagging them, hoping they're going to go, oh, Kim, we would love to collaborate with you. You never know. Just looking at ways that I can build this brand. And now I'm thinking, okay, how can I expand that? I use it in other ways while still enjoying my true love, which is creating the art.
And I love stuff like that because it's on brand. It's not really necessarily a ton of more work, if any more work.
Right.
And it's you. And I'm the same way. I'm always thinking of more ways to expand and be creative in that way.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I love to end every episode with just a lesson, a tip, a book, an app, something that's helped you to kind of get where you are in your career. It can be big, it can be small. Anything kind of initially come to mind?
I really think, like I said, the big tip for me is to continue to network. I would really recommend that people who want to be in art take a workshop, go take an art class, even if it's just a 1 day art class locally, or just to really make an effort, comment on other artists' work that you love. People are so willing to share what they know, but they don't know you need it. So try to just make an effort to comment on somebody's work. I love this. This is one of my favorites. I love your work. It's thrilling as an artist to see somebody take the time to write that. But it also is a way for you to start to connect with that person, and then if you write again and ask, like I had somebody write me recently and say, what brush do you use to sign your work? I really struggle with that. So I took a picture of it, sent it back to them because I was at the studio. It wasn't a big deal for me, but I'll remember her name. I feel like that's a big tip. And the other big tip, and I've said this 100 times, but people have got to decide who they're trying to sell to.
Yeah. I think that's huge.
Take some time to really think, okay, this is who I'm looking for. Where are they?
Yeah, I completely agree with both of those and really all the advice you've given today. Can you tell everyone where they can find you, your Instagram, your website, all the different places where they can learn more about you?
Yes, I'll make it real easy for you. My Instagram is at Kim Hassold. So it's KIMHASSOLD. And my website is Kim Hassold as well. And so it's very easy to find me. I have Facebook, but I rarely use it. So really, those are the two best ways. And get on my newsletter. That's the thing to do.
Yeah. I love it. Well, I will link all of this in the show notes so everyone can learn more, but this has been great. Thank you so much.